Yo, have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast, My Hero Academia edition. Today, we are doing our third My Hero Academia case study. If you haven't checked out the first one was about Endeavor's family. The second one was All Might being the symbol of peace. So now we are on our third one, as we are going to be doing these until season 6 comes back. And we have our My Hero enthusiast, Andrea, with us. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing well, Martin. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's always great to talk to you about My Hero Academia in this way. So this topic I got to pick, and I picked after watching the movie, watching season 4 with the quirk bullets and the trigger bombs, and seeing how they could have wiped out and hearing the villain's thoughts. My question was, should the My Hero world actually have the trigger bomb and the quirk stealing bullets for extreme situations? So this would be like the police, the governments, and all of that. So that is the question we're going to be talking today. Going to go a whole different avenues, kind of hits to real life in regards to like weapons and things of that nature and situations. So yeah. Here we are. Andrea, do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
I'll go ahead and go first and just like touching lightly on both, because I feel like you might have like really dug deep for this and I really want to hear what you have to say. My initial thoughts, I am not necessarily against the police or the government having like quirk erasing bullets or even, having more scientific modifications to that serum to make it shorter acting, so like eventually making it like pharmaceutical, that it's like a pill, like a daily pill to suppress a quirk or help manage a quirk. Because as the what is that theory called, the
quirk singularity theory?
Thank you. Yes.
Oh yeah, I have a whole bunch of stuff on that.
Yes, so like if those quirks are going to keep getting out of control, and before anyone can even really like help the individual learn to control that quirk or just diminish it, having like a sort of medication might be very beneficial for that. However, that then you have your slippery slope of like, okay, well, what quirks are going to qualify, not qualify? Are people going to overprescribe, underprescribe? Is the government going to try to control who gets those, who doesn't? All of that stuff. But in general, I am in favor of the quirk erasing bullets or long-term medication. I just don't really see the benefit of keeping trigger bombs, because to me, basically, it kind of reminds me of a nuke for people with quirks, which is most of the planet. And the only thing I could think of was like, okay, maybe if like a supervillain, whatever, got maybe the death penalty or something, that you would use like a small dosage of that formula in the trigger bomb to kill them. But that's inhumane, because as we saw in the movie, it makes the quirk go haywire and it looked like these people were in a lot of physical pain before they died. So like, maybe I'm just not seeing it yet. I want to hear what you have to say, but I don't think there's any benefit overall to keeping the trigger bombs. I really don't.
So not to put you on the spot here, but are you in favor of real life countries having nuclear weapons?
No. I'm not. I know since we have them, we can't go back. Like there's no going back. Once you flip that switch, you can't go back. But since this, and I guess since they're there and everybody knows about it now, because in the movie it was worldwide that this terrorist organization planted them everywhere. So it's not just necessarily one government body now having access and being able to analyze this that code or formula is a better word for those bombs to create that reaction. It's just one of those things where I think that should be kept under lock and key. Nobody should use them, kind of like, weaponized spores that like biological warfare. Like, no, you just don't go there. Of course, there's bad and evil everywhere, so they're going to want to get that information is attainable. So, no, I'm not a fan of nuclear weapons.
Well, you said biological warfare, and I know you weren't a fan, but you already saw that in this past season with the girl from Class 1B, who's basically almost she's a biological weapon. Because you even called her, she was cheating because of her quirk and her ability to knock people out. So there's already people who have those type of abilities. And just to go all the way back before about the bombs. So this is going to be the first time I actually call him by his name since I was doing a lot of research on this. Dr. Kudaya Gariki, aka Dr. Egghead. So calling him by his name for the first time on a My Hero podcast. He was the one who made the quirk singularity theory, and he made it all the way back. And you already hit it. Basics of the stuff is as quirks continue to evolve, blend, generations get more and more powerful, and it's not going in a proportional rate. So it's like they're going super rapid fast. And no one believed him at the beginning, but we just have to look at right now. Aerie is probably what, 5, 6, 7 max, and she's 7, and Deku is 15, 16. All Might would be in his 40s, maybe 50s, and Aerie was born with a quirk that could literally reverse a living organism in her earth into the earliest state. That's literally an example of how quirks are getting way OP, and that people, they can't keep up with the stuff going on right now. So that's already showing the doctor's theory is true. And it was already stated in My Hero Academia season 4 with Overhaul. So season 4, when Todoroki and Bakugo had to do their remedial class.
Right. When they had to babysit those like kindergartners, and those kindergartners were the worst of the worst because their quirks were so powerful. They felt like they didn't have to listen to anybody, their teacher, society, whatever, because they felt, in childlike, selfishness that if you're powerful, you run everything.
Yeah. And President Mike and the teacher from the school with the wind and Cammy, Senji, when President Mike's like, what's going on? This is far more advanced, both from a physical, psychological standpoint. And then Senji was saying, ... I've heard of this before. With each new generation, quirks blend and evolve. There will come a day where these complex, overpowered quirks will be impossible for individuals to control. And that is called the quirk singularity doomsday theory. So it's like, and this theory, again, why I was really interested in talking about this, because it was brought up in the past movie, and that was the humanizer's main thing, that, hey, there's a whole bunch of, there's 20% of the world who's quirkless. And sure, if you're just saying it from like 80-20, sure, 80 is more than 20. But if you're doing world population, that's still billions of people who don't have a quirk. So if these quirks keep going out of control, and over the top, like if Aerie can rewind a living organism, just think about if someone's born after her, they're going to be born with the ability to bring back the dead. Like, if
right. And I actually thought of Aerie when as I mentioned earlier about the quirk erasing bullets eventually being turned into some sort of suppressant medication. She was kind of who I had in mind when I was thinking about that, because she obviously cannot control it. Her trauma doesn't help. but it's basically, if I remember correctly, when it's mentioned how she unalived her parents, is she was an infant or a toddler, like, and there's no undoing that, obviously, but it's also not her fault. So at that point, it'd be, I would think, take her to a doctor, get her on that suppressant medication, and then if she wants to learn to eventually control it to be a hero, then you would start weaning the dose down. Like, that's kind of what I was thinking of when I was thinking of that medication kind of situation.
And the fact too is like all these quirks just came out of nowhere, even in recent history, because the guy who was first born with the baby who was first born with the quirk in China was glowing, and then since then quirks just started popping out of anywhere. It wasn't like a natural thing. It's quirk mutation,
right? Like it didn't all come straight from that baby and then eventually branch out. It was kind of like I mean, it's a little bit of a big bang, kind of like once it was there, it went everywhere type situation.
Yeah, and it's the fact that they keep getting stronger and stronger that is a problem. And the fact that the doctor made this idea and the only person who truly believed him was All For One. All For One read the theory, sought him out, talked to him about the theory, proposed to work together, and hence why the doctor's so loyal to All For One, because if only one person is there for you, you're going to be loyal to them to the fault. So he's been working with them, and All For One believed it because he was amassing all these quirks and his body was starting to deteriorate. I mean, when we see him, we don't even see his eyes. Like he just looks like he looks like a pencil eraser in the face. So I think like with that and that they keep getting stronger and stronger is already an issue. And then when you go to someone like Overhaul, who he believed they were a disease, they were a mutation, and he wanted to, he deemed quirks in general as a sickness, which makes singularity a disease too. So you can make it a disease, however you want to, you call it. So his main goal is that he was tired of the people who got quirks doing them for hero stuff and villain stuff. Like some of the thing was too, so that his organization, they could be back on top. But most of his stuff was that the heroes are acting all high and mighty, and the Yakuza, I'm sorry, that was Overall's group. The heroes are acting all high and mighty, and then the villains are giving the Yakuza a bad name. So his thing is like, hey, I'm gonna get rid of quirks and put everyone back on an equal playing field. Obviously his stuff failed. They ended up beating him at the end of season 4, but then he loses his arms, goes to jail. League of Villains takes the rest of the bullets. Also, the thing that people forgot with the bullets is that Overall also made the antidote. Like people forget about that. Like there's an antidote to the quirk stealing bullets that if someone gets shot with them, you can heal them, but those antidotes haven't been seen since Overhaul went to jail. And then I guess too is like, so if the police force, because the police force, I know we talked about it a little bit last time, but they have basically no powers in that police force. They're
not allowed. They're not allowed to use quirks. They're just, it seems like unless you have a physical, because we saw one police officer who's like anthropomorphic, that it's like basically a cat, but I don't think even, that police officer would be allowed to use if they have claws to scratch a perp or a villain, whatever. Like they're supposed to be, even though they might possess quirks, they're not licensed to use them.
Right. And I'm assuming that, and I'm just going to generalize that this is a police force all across the planet, that they can't use their quirks, stuff like that. And their main job is just arresting the villains after the heroes show up and beat them. So my biggest thing with that is that if there's no hero in the area, what are they supposed to do against someone with powers? And that's happened a lot of times in this series. Shigaraki, there was no heroes to protect him when he was getting beat up, hence what we have now, because All For One was there for him. The character in the heroes mission, he said how heroes don't go to his area either, the main.
Right.
So, and we also don't know if how many heroes are proportionalized across the world. Like, does one country have more heroes than the other? Do third world, like we haven't seen a third world country, do they have any heroes? Or did those third world heroes, all are going back to Stain, did they move away from their third world country because they weren't going to make any money there being a hero? Because now it's about the money, fame, notoriety of being number one or whatever you are, hence why Stain hates heroes now. So it's like, we don't know how all these other countries, how many heroes they have, if they've left to go to Japan or they left to go to the United States. I mean, All Might left to go train in the United States and come back and stuff like that. So how many are leaving? It's just like immigration. How many are leaving to a better place and then their place just gets left in the mud? And if there's no hero or retired hero and a villain is there messing things up with quirks, what are the police going to do?
Right. And I mean, we also saw that in the Heroes Rising movie, in that island, it's isolated, so it doesn't really need like a whole army of heroes, but they had one hero for several decades, and then when that hero died, I mean, they kind of sent the kids out there of like, hey, have fun, nothing bad could go wrong, but then that's the entire movie, shit went down. So it's also a bit of a guessing game, because you can never, honestly, you could probably never accurately prepare for the max level threats that come, because they seem to be a little bit random on the good guy side, because they don't know what the plans are on the opposite side till it's kind of already unfolding, or you have a spy situation, which I also wonder, this is totally off topic, but so like Naruto they're all shinobi, but then they have the Anbu, they have like specific kind of spy networks. Do they have specific like surveillance hero networks that are under the radar, just straight up spies? Because that would be so cool. That would be so cool.
Not to what we've seen. The only, I guess, well, no, because it ended. The only spy that we've seen is Hawks, basically, like a double agent. I mean, we just learned that they basically had a UN 2 months ago in the movie, that they basically had a UN. Also, with that island, too, they had no police force. Like, the power, that's something the police, power's out in the on the island, let's make an SOS call, things of that nature. So I've always thought with them that they need something, because if there's no one else there, if there's no heroes there, or you're dealing with a superficial hero, it's like, that's not a big enough villain for me to come out and beat, so you guys can handle it on your own, then they're SOL. And then whoever's getting hurt is probably going to get beat up pretty bad, maybe close to death, depending on what happens. And then their police people are going to die too, which means family lost people. So it's like, what are they doing to defend themselves? And also, too, with the bullets, if you have a strong enough villain who's a telepath, who can take control of heroes, anyone, if there's a villain right now who we see 20 episodes, whatever, down the road, that's like, I have the ability to mind control anyone who has a quirk, what are we going to do? Because with the quirk singularity theory, someone like that is going to be born soon.
Well, right. I mean, we have Shinsho already. His is just, he has the caveat of you having to answer him. Like, that's the only thing stopping him. I know it's not specific to people with quirks, which is even scarier, but that's one of those things where it's like, people with these uber powerful kind of scary quirks, it's almost like you got to cross your fingers that they're going to be heroes or decide not to use their quirks at all. Because if they don't go with those two options, people are in trouble. So, and
you just brought up Shinsho. Like, what if he gets controlled, or he's having?
What if he's the traitor?
What if he's a traitor? It takes one bad day for most people to just go off the deep end, and he goes, All for One recruits him. He goes on a national global broadcast because it's like the unveiling of the top 10 heroes again. and then he speaks because everyone's watching.
Done.
And then what are people going to do about that? So I've always felt like the police need something just in case the heroes aren't there. And more importantly, and this is going to lead to some of the bomb stuff too, they need stuff now because where we're at the end of season 5, they've proven you can't trust most of the heroes because most of them are bad guys. Like, they're part of the Meta Liberation Army, which only a few know about. So it's like, what are we doing for that? Because what happens when they bust into the police station, take over, or better yet, can you imagine if there's no heroes around, they go bust into whoever their president's place, take over, what are you going to do? Or the heroes that are protecting the president are undercover Meta Liberation Army people. They're already there.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do.
I mean, who's to say the police chiefs, the higher ups aren't, pro Meta Liberation? Because again, for them, they're normal people not allowed to use their quirks. Under Meta Liberation theory, they'd be able to do whatever the hell they want with their quirk. So superficially, it benefits the most people to be pro Meta Liberation because then you could just run rampant.
Puts more people in danger, though, depending on who has the powers and all of that. So I've just been thinking that. So I with the bullets, I think they should have the bullets just in case. I think you give it to an elite team head by like someone you could really trust. So like the police officer that all might really trust, like him being like the special task force leader, like, hey, this is going on. Do we need to go in? And you have to get like approval. And also they have the antidote too. Well, they have to make an antidote because I don't think they found the one from Overhaul. So these things wouldn't even be temporary. So if you have the antidote, you shoot it, just incapacitate them, lock them up, and then you can give them their quirk back depending on what their quirk is, if it's going to help them break out of jail. So I do think that Overall had a slightly right idea. He was just, crazy.
Yeah. But, I also think, because I also started thinking about the, because Overhaul also had put the drugs on the street, the quirk enhancing drugs.
That was Trigger, which led to the bombs.
I was also wondering if they could tamper with the quirk erasing bullets to have different tiers of them so that you would have a dampener effect, and then bringing somebody's quirk down a few notches could be successful for normal police officers to handle. But then once you kind of have to hit top level threat, heroes are down, nobody's coming, to hit them with the quirk erasing bullet where you don't have an antidote for, because then you could get into different sorts of like quote unquote human rights violations, just forcibly taking somebody's quirk without due process and all that other legal fun stuff. But I think, I don't think the quirk erasing bullets are that bad. I also personally think that in addition to like getting something like life in prison for somebody like All for One specifically, go through the trial process, whatever, he gets life in prison, hit him with that quirk erasing bullet, like Nimola is done. That way he's less of a threat if he gets out, as well as he's easier to confine, because right now, what is it called? Is it Tartarus? Where all of the like mega villains are housed and held. They're going to get somebody in there with a quirk or different sets of quirk abilities that they're not going to be able to contain. So it's hard to keep all of them secure. So I feel like potentially, in addition to whatever length of time they should be punished, potentially getting their quirk taken away instead of like a death penalty would be sufficient.
I guess my only thing with your thing about All for One is that we haven't seen if the quirk erasing bullet takes out someone if it could take out multiple quirks or one quirk, since it has like a billion quirks.
Right.
So that's the only thing with that. And no, I like the idea. And also with you brought that up too, with there's some people who don't want to have quirks. Goes back to the old X-Men movies of Rogue wanting to be able to like touch someone. So like if Shigaragi alternate universe wanted to actually like hold someone and like be with his family, but he can't because of his hands and he wants to get rid of his quirk or take some medicine. I mean, if you want to, that should be allowed, like
available,
at least the option if you want to, but then you know the risk, like, hey, if you do this, it's going to be gone. Or we have pills that you can take that once you're done doing whatever, you can have your quirk back. So it's all the same thing, like medication, like birth control, all that stuff. You know what the risk and all that, and you know what it's for. And if you want to take it, you should have the option to take it. And it's just, yeah, the police are just outmanned, outgunned. If the heroes ever turned on them, if anyone with quirks ever turned on population, they would be screwed, which goes to the bombs. So my only thing with the trigger bombs is because All For One is very charismatic. He really is. He knows how to get people to follow him.
Which is weird because now he has no face, which is supposed to be like a massive stay away from me type situation. But yeah, just.
So, Andrea, I'm going to ask you then, what happens if All For One breaks out and then he has his own continent of soldiers? What are you going to do? The guy who's been number one villain for hundreds of years, and now he has a continent, like a whole continent of all his soldiers, and they're coming in, wrecking shop, and they're taking over the planet because no hero right now is strong enough to beat All For One. So he just kills all your top heroes. What are you going to do? Which is a very plausible thing because you just talked about him breaking out. He can easily go and take over. Like imagine All For One breaks out, takes over the Meta Liberation Army and the humanized group, whatever the remaining soldiers of that, takes over a continent, has them all working for him, doing his bidding, killing everybody and all that. It's like, what would you do to beat him?
I don't know. I just don't want to use those bombs. It was ugly watching those go off, and I understand that keeping a national or a world level threat contained requires blood, sacrifice, pain, but it just doesn't sit right with me. My initial idea would be, even though again we might have these quirk erasing bullets, even if we have to hit him up 1,000 times the dose to at least get rid of 1,000 of his quirks, continually trying to bring him down, I feel like stealth is more the way to go with all of that. But
can you stealth?
That's going to take time. Sorry, what?
Can you stealth All For One? If someone could have stealthed him, he wouldn't have been a problem to this day.
There's got to be somebody with a quirk that can do it. At this point, somebody's going to have a quirk that can do it either now or eventually, which eventually is a bit of a problem because eventually he might run the world and everybody.
But if there's a quirk like that, he would have already known about it because remember, his doctor checks basically everybody. I mean, he's
everybody in that country.
Everyone in that country.
But something else I wanted to bring up was having kind of, I don't want to say like the Avengers, but essentially like a core group of heroes from different countries that can work eventually as a team. So I think that would be kind of cool. That also happens a little bit.
It basically happened in the movie.
Almost, right. Yeah. But it's not as organized. That was not nearly as organized. And most of those heroes that we saw were the Japanese heroes. But that's just kind of, I think, skewed that way for a reason. But having top heroes or selectively people with quirks that are designed or can be utilized in a specific manner globally would be, I think, beneficial. Would that be enough to stop All For One? Probably not, because basically what pops into my head immediately is what were they called? From Hunter x Hunter, the 12 like greatest fighters in the world, whatever, pop up and get
Oh,
blasted.
against that. Oh yeah, which one? In season 2 against the Phantom Throat, where they all got smoked, or when they
Yeah.
they all got freaking killed.
Were they the 12 Zodiacs or something? What
Yeah,
the
they
hell
had
were
some.
they? They were
Yeah, they were some bodyguard name, and then like the dude Kurapachi smoked 3/4 of them by himself. So they
right,
were
and the others
terrible.
that were there found out were like, holy shit, we can't deal with this. And they're supposed, at least the way they were described, they were supposed to be the top in the entire world. So it was like, and then Kurapika just walked in there and just
He was
smashed him, but it's fine.
So you brought up that Avenger thing. We'll go back to the all for one country thing, but that Avenger thing from different nations. What happens when you go to war and you're part of that
That
team?
was something else I thought about too.
Are you going to say F you to your country? Because if you say F you to your country, you're going to be ostracized, and then they're going to take your ass out because you're going to be deemed worse than a village. You're going to be a traitor to your nation. So what do you do there?
I don't know. I had also thought about wars because that was something I wanted to know, just like the general question. Since heroes are technically, at least in Japan, we don't necessarily know the rules in the other countries, but in Japan, heroes are the only ones allowed to use their quirks.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean if a hero joins the army, are they able to use their quirks? Or is it because you're at war and you're in the army, anything goes, so everybody gets to use their quirks?
So I would assume that anyone would get to use their quirks. I would harpen it to selective service in real life, like anyone who's X amount of age. When you do student loans, you can be drafted. So anyone who has a quirk, you're a hero. But if Japan's going to war against Russia, you could be called from your hero agency to come and fight, because that is something too that in the DC and Marvel universe, they're basically saying that it's kind of funny how 97% of superheroes live in the United States. So what if the United States just turned all their heroes against our countries? We'd stand no chance. We need to do something. So that's the only thing with like that strike. Like if their countries start going at it, that strike team's disbanded, and then they're going to have to fight each other. And who's saying that if one country, let's just say Japan right now, because that's where this is taking place and has most of the heroes, if they start taking over everybody, what are those other countries going to do? It's never good to have one country rule the planet.
Right.
Especially when all for one can rule it.
True. Honestly, All for One would be manipulating all the countries to go to war with each other, so that way after everybody's freaking annihilated, he stands on top of the heap. But anyway, I mean, when I was thinking about it independently about the possibility of heroes going to war, this might just be very naive or altruistic, but the idea of heroes, at least the heroes in the like My Hero world, I can't speak about Marvel DC in depth, but going to war doesn't seem to line up with the general sense of what being a hero is supposed to be. And again, it's supposed to be. So I feel like as a hero, your main objective is to protect people. And I think you could extend it further to the people of your country, but I don't think heroes necessarily would see it that way. Obviously, All Might went to America, to the US, so he was protecting American citizens even though he was Japanese. So I don't think heroes in general should be in a warlike situation.
So go ahead.
It's confusing, and I know it's conflicting because obviously these heroes are licensed through their government, at least in Japan. So they're licensed through the government, but at the same time, I feel like the government shouldn't be able to require or conscript heroes to fight for political reasons, which is what a lot of wars are based on. Because generally, the heroes are supposed to protect people. Their goal is not, other than Bakugo, than to go and just win and beat everybody else. So maybe it's I don't want it to match, and that's why I'm coming up with this confliction, but I really don't feel like heroes have a place in a war.
All right. So
Go ahead.
So two things on the things you just said. So the first thing with the political thing. So, which I do know, the top hero in the United States is a woman. So shout out to her. But if she comes to Japan and kills a Japan president and they declare war, what happens? And the reason I'm bringing that up is because you brought like the hero thing, but this was the issue that Stain had. This is the issue that Overhaul had. The hero and villain is designated by your perspective. So if the top hero in the USA kills the Japan president and puts Japan in a frenzy, Japan is going to deem, if the top hero, which means you represent the country, they're going to deem the Americans as the villains. So that already wording wise is, hey, we can send our heroes to take out these villains. So it's all based on the perspective of whose eyes you're looking through. Or if Japan retaliating.
So at least for that one, the way I would hope it would go is that so with the American hero killing the Japanese president, the way I would expect things to go, which is that the heroes would then target that American quote unquote hero as the villain instead of potentially declaring war on the country. However, if the US government told the hero, hey, go assassinate the Japanese president, then you can't separate the two. But I think I would just really hope it could be teased out, especially since we, at least in the heroes that we know intimately, a lot of them do look at things from the opposite perspective. At least our kids in class 1A do.
Yeah, but they're not
mostly Deku does.
They're not the top people. So going on your thing, just to stay on that with they just want that hero. If the United States says no, we're not giving you our top hero. Like let's say she acted rogue or whatever, or she was mind controlled. Okay. She did that. Well, in this, just an example, she did that. They're like, no, we're not giving you our top hero. Well, she's wanted as a villain in Japan and she's going to face justice. USA is like, no, you're going to have to come take her. They're going to send people to take her, and that's a war because they're going to protect her. There you go.
Yep.
And then other countries are going to see that, and it's like, oh, the top hero, almost to what the humanizers said, almost try to do. The top hero in America is fighting all the top heroes in Japan. They're in this war. This is the perfect opportunity for another country to try and swoop in and take over the United States and Japan. So like it only takes one thing. Just look at the lengths of he was mind control. Going back to Marvel, look at the lengths that the Avengers broke up because of Bucky.
Right.
Or a murder he didn't do. So that strike force that you just talked about broke up. And the guy didn't do it, and they still broke up because of the conflicts that it caused. And then we saw what led to that. Thanos came, they weren't together, got snapped, half of them died. Overhaul comes, galvanizes the remaining people alive because that's what he can do. And then he takes over the world. And there's nothing to stop him. Because he'll see that bullet coming a mile away. This is a guy who's fought every user of One for All. And he would know about it. And if this canonly happened, because the League of Villains has some bullets where the author may forget about it by the end of whatever, but we saw them take it. So it's like, what are you going to do now if Overhaul has the bullets? I mean, not Overhaul, All for One, because Shigaraki is going to give them to his master. So,
oh, for sure.
It's just simple stuff like that. Just think about it in the movie. Those heroes who didn't know Midoriya were going to go take him in.
Right.
If their heroes are like, we're not giving Midoriya, okay, all the heroes in Japan who have Midoriya are deemed villains by the rest of the world, and they got to take them out. And then you have a war right there, all to protect Midoriya. I almost thought that's how that movie was going to turn out, but they didn't have enough time because they could have turned it that way that UA students, Endeavor agencies, like, no, he never do it. Everyone's like, hey, you got to turn him in or we're coming to get him. And then you have a fight. Or Japan's government's like, hey, this is coming from your president. You got to turn that kid in. And they're like, no. Then you're in war. Everyone's deemed treason. And then you have chaos. And then what do you do? Because they don't have the bullets and they don't have the trigger bombs. And I think with the nuclear bombs, like in real life, obviously, you don't ever want to get to a point where those ever have to be used again. There's an argument that she shouldn't even been used the first time.
For sure.
Having them potentially as a deterrent is something I am kind of in favor for. Like, All for One can't be like, oh, I can't take over this whole country because if I'm over here messing stuff up, they can nuke me. I'm going to have to reframe some of my evil ways in some way because there's one weapon that could take you out. And also with the bomb, I don't even think you need to do it for the whole country per se, but the way those scientists were working to turn that drug into a freaking nuclear bomb, you can find a way where you could turn it to something that only attacks that specific person. Like, it's like, hey, we got to kill All for One. Like, honestly, he should have been dead a long time ago. They should have put him out, but he keeps surviving. We need to do it. Send whatever machine. What if the trigger bomb, the nuclear bomb, since we're blending all the things, was an Iron Man suit and All Might's the only one with the password? Would you be all right with that? Or All Might's the only one who is allowed to authorize any use of mini nuclear bomb, whatever. But this goes back to another thing, which I wanted to bring up too, before I go back to a second point you made about the Japanese heroes. All this stuff got made when All Might was done. Like we talked about last time. None of this, no quirk stealing bullets, no nuclear bombs was made when All Might was around because All Might was around. And like we talked about the last one, everyone got soft when he was here. And now we're talking about like, hey, we need nuclear bombs. Because what happens when a kid is born who's literally a nuclear bomb? What are they going to do? And if All for One's still around, I hope he's gone by then. But if that doctor finds a kid who, if he starts crying, like emotions get up, like we saw people who they have emotions and they can get stronger and all that. If it's the opposite, like if a kid gets wound up to a point where they feel like nothing's working and they explode and they're a nuclear bomb, what are you going to do against that? If you have no bullets or a deterrent of your own? Because All for One is swooping that kid up so fast. It's going to tell him his parents abandoned him. He's the only one here for him. The doctor's going to give him candy. He's going to train him to control it. And anytime the guy or girl gets mad, sad, whatever, it goes crazy. Or with the quirk singularity thing, because now you're having arranged marriages, things like that. So Bakugo's thing is explosion.
Right.
Momo's thing is creation. I know you're going to hate this, but just bear with me for the sake of this thing.
No, don't go there.
You got to. If Bakugo and Momo had a child and got both quirks, what if that child could make a nuclear bomb? Because it has explosion from Bakugo and the creation stuff from Momo. What do you do?
In theory, I think Momo can make a nuclear bomb by herself. All she needs is to understand the materials and the functions of the bomb, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think her body
could handle that though. Because like she's never made anything like massive.
She also has to go off body fat, which she doesn't have a lot of.
Now, I mean, in the way that she's drawn now, by the time she's an adult, she probably, well, depending on how they go, they give like Tsunade and them a run for their money. So she might have enough fat from like her breast area, but still, honestly, that wouldn't be enough.
Honestly, I kind of hope they go. I know it's going to like tank a lot of people's waifu status of her, but I hope they go like shoot, what's his name? The guy with the candy bar, Beckham, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes. I hope they go that avenue with her because she would be so much stronger if she had more to work with. Okay?
Or, going back to your thing, she learned get some better hand-to-hand combat, but she did good all right in the movie. But just like stuff like that, if you start mixing quirks that are explosion or like this and that, what do you, or if you, I guess Bakugo's thing, because it's explosion, you mix Bakugo, and in this world, if he's gay and he gets married to like Shinsho, and that quirk mixes, that anytime you follow Shinsho's command, it automatically explodes you. What are you gonna do?
That's fair. I mean, there's also the possibility, with the singularity theory in general, like, I don't believe, I could be wrong, but I don't believe Aries' parents had quirks that perfectly combined to give her what she had. It seems that uber powerful quirks like that can come out of nowhere. There's also...
Well, they are now. That's the point of the theory.
Right. So, I don't know. It's hard. I don't feel like this is a plot hole, but I feel like the story could be developed this way down the line. And this is completely off topic as well, but while I was thinking about all of this stuff, I kind of realized My Hero is actually set in the future. Mm-hmm. So, like, I believe Aizawa and Endeavor, their dates of birth are closer to, like, now or about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the technology that they have, they should be way more advanced technologically than they are, because this is supposed to be decades in the future.
Yeah, but technology didn't advance, people did. That's bigger.
Exactly. So because people were advancing so fast, they were all focusing on people instead of advancing technology. And I feel like that needs to be shifted to help minimize the damage. I don't want to say the damage. Minimize potential negative impact.
But why would you want to worry about technology is obsolete basically over there because of all the people with their powers. You really don't need a car if you can fly or if you can run fast. Like,
that's true, but you're not technically supposed to be flying or running. Well, you can run on the sidewalk, whatever the hell, that's fine. But you're technically not supposed to be flying if you don't have a license to be a hero. You're not supposed to be using your quirks.
Under this current regime. So if because we're basing this in real life, if these people get voted out 10 years from now and freaking got Shigaragi's president and those laws get lifted, like, we're basing it off if they have a real government, they can get voted out, or in this case, assassinated. Those rules can change.
That's true. But the hope is that things don't change that drastically, because then you would have chaos and anarchy.
Yeah.
So the social fabric is trying to hold, and that's what the heroes are fighting for. So I also feel like that's partially why we don't really get into... Obviously, we have a war coming with the Meta Liberation Army, but the show doesn't get into or really talk about wars between countries. Like, we haven't had any actual talk, at least that I'm aware of heroes being involved in battle.
Well,
in
recent
international
memory,
conflicts.
So recent memory, we're going to keep connecting stuff. There was probably no wars, because who are you going to go to war with if All Might's there? Because he'll just stop you. You're not going to go to war with Japan because that's where he's from. And he's just going to stop anyone else who goes to war because he can literally beat anyone. So he literally, again, going back to All Might, deterrent. So now that he's gone, other countries like, Endeavor's strong, but, if we send an army out there, we could take out Japan. And we could take their resources. And going back to something you said earlier about the heroes that we know, and this is going back to something I've really, really hated, is the fact that all their public and hero identities are known. So it's like,
I fucking know. Oh,
so what are you going to say to that? This is your government duty. Well, now it's like, if Japan's like, hey, we have to do a draft, and anyone can be drafted, your name's public. Hence why, like, you can never go like a DC thing. You can never draft Superman or Batman because you don't know who the hell they really are. Mm-hmm. Here, you could be like, oh, we're drafting Enji Todoroki. We're drafting Shoto Todoroki. You have no choice, or you lose your hero license. You're deemed a traitor. And your family gets put in jail. Like real stuff that happens in real world right now. So it's like, oh, if I don't go to war, I'm going to be deemed a villain, and I've worked my whole life to be a hero because I'm going to lose my hero license. And if I go save someone without my license, I'm going to go to jail, which again, that goes to Shigaragi, which why he has a problem with heroes and all that stuff. Because if you take the licenses and let people do what they want, a la Meta Liberation Army, see, we're just all this stuff's going full circle. So then what do you do? Because if they revolt, the government's going to be like, how are we going to take them out? Well,
that's also why I feel like slightly, again, this is probably a hope, wish, and a prayer, but I would hope that the government wouldn't be that petty, that there's something in potentially the hero licenses that exempt you from being drafted or having to be conscripted, like to keep them out of it. Because then truly, as a government, they're not completely stupid people. So they should know that telling a hero to try to go to war, the hero potentially could tell them no. And then you would potentially start all this internal conflict and internal infighting when they're about to try to fight a war with somebody else. So you would want to avoid all of that.
Unless they know they have to.
It makes me... Sorry?
Unless they know they have to, because just thinking about a government thing, like of super powerful people being ran by normal people, a lot of Naruto, they're all ran by the feudal lords. If they say go to war, you're going to war. Period.
I know, that is so crazy. That still blows my mind.
They had to get permission from them to enter. Pain blew up the village, and then like the Obito declared war on the planet, and you cannot do anything until you get permission from your feudal lord. So it could be the same exact thing here, where it's like, hey, if they say you got to go to war, you got to do it. Period. Like, I wish the Japanese president would have called in Denver, like, hey, you got to turn in Midoriya. And I wish I would have seen what they would have done. So
yeah, that would be that would have been a very interesting turn of events. That movie would have been another like hour and a half long to get that figured out. But it would have been very interesting to see how it would have played out. And honestly, we probably would have gotten feelings of resentment, at least at the end, towards the government, which, I mean, going to your example with Naruto and the feudal lords, I was also thinking about this, just kind of strings of thoughts. Why don't we have either retired heroes or current heroes in any sort of, like committee, government, decision-making processes? Because it is just, I mean, these people have quirks. It's assumed most everybody has quirks, but they're not heroes. So they're being completely left out of the conversation and just taking orders, which isn't necessarily awful, but at the same time, it's a loss of perspective in the decision-making process.
My pushback to that is because I could see why they wouldn't have anyone with quirks, because if you're just relating it to Naruto with the 5 Kage summit, if someone had an ability like Shinsho's or Danzo with Shishui's eye, they're running the whole country or the whole planet. So it's like they probably want to keep those quirk people out of there because you don't know what their intentions are. The same reason they're not in the police force. I feel like every governmental power, quirk people are not in it, just for the fact that if they wanted to, they could kill and overrun them. So we got to put sanctions. So that's why I think they're not in there. Like right now, I think All Might should be in it right now. He has no quirk. He should be the perfect candidate to be sitting there because he's respected by everyone on planet Earth.
It's fair. I don't know. To be completely exclusionary of them, feels a little discriminatory to me. It also just seems, I mean, you're going to have these what if situations with every single person that walks in the door. Anybody can be highly intelligent and come up with a plan to overthrow the social fabric. Like,
but it's easier when they
you
don't
have
have
to
a
have
quirk,
an
though.
OP quirk. It is easier.
It's easier to beat them if they don't have a quirk. It's a lot harder if Endeavor's like, I'm going to come run this thing.
But if they have enough support behind them, which most of the time they're going to, that includes people with quirks, you're going to wind up in the same kind of situation, although the person at the top isn't as powerful.
Well, like if any vote came like, hey, we want to restrict more quirk using, so now you can't use your quirk until you, like if they said something like you can't use your quirk until you're in your second year of UA or whatever high school, there's going to be pushback. People are going to vote no, and they're going to be like, because most of the people, because it all comes down to the real world. You're going to vote for things that affect you. As cold-blooded as it is, like if you want to care about other people and all of that, that is great. But you are more likely going to go to that booth and you're going to vote for the person or whatever who is benefiting you. So if 80% of the world is quirks, they're going to vote for things that benefit quirk users. And then those other people are going to be like, what am I? Chopped liver. And hence why a group like the humanized group was able to rise, because they felt like us normal people are basically treated like trash, which should not be the case.
Mm-hmm.
And then going back all the way back to All Might and All for One in the Island, which I very well think he could do, he may do. But if he takes over a continent and all these other pro heroes are getting sent there and they're all going to die, especially if he's back at full power, there's no one who could beat him right now. What do you really do? You have no options except for those bullets or dropping the bomb. And on the bomb thing, it doesn't have to be a nuclear bomb. You can make it a small bomb, something that takes him out. Like, you have no other options to beat him. Because right now, I mean, the only one who'd be able to, like, because you have to wait for One for All to get to his max thing, Deku can. That's going to take 20 years the way he grows. So it's like,
I freaking know. His process needs to get a jump start here soon. Like, it's just taking a little bit too damn long, which actually has only been about 2 years, which he went from literally 0 to, he's at what now, 20%?
20.
So like, that's about 10% a year. So like 8 more years. If we had the time, that'd be great. But like, if he could compound that, maybe 20% a year. So all this experience from the war is going to jumpstart him anyway.
It's the same thing too with like just DC and all this. So like All Might being like why Batman always had contingency plans for Superman. He knew he would never go rogue, but mind control, or in some cases, the loss of Lois Lane pushes you over the edge. If All Might in his prime went evil, what would the planet have done?
Nothing.
Or if someone could imagine All Might in his prime, and then Shinsho is born back then, and someone uses Shinsho to control All Might. What do? You got to have a plan. And just in real life, you have to prepare for the worst as much as we don't want to, but you have to. Or shoot, I mean, Midoriya boy, when he gets the, because I mean, every manga, anime, all goes the same. Somehow, when Midoriya is all said and done, he will be stronger than All Might. Mm-hmm. If someone takes Midoriya's mom and kills her, how we think he's not gonna go over the edge?
He might go for vengeance, but he won't be a villain. He won't try to take over the world. So like,
okay, not take over the world.
We might need to like apprehend Deku and put him in jail. Yeah, probably, but
what if Midoriya, in this case, his mom gets assassinated and the assassin was hired by like the Japanese president, and there's another person's president. He goes over the edge, kills them. That instantly starts a war. That's how every war starts. If you kill the top leader, that country is going to revolt, even if your actions were justified. Because we've seen him act as kind as he is. we have seen him act very impulsive, and it has cost some people some stuff. So it's like,
oh yeah,
what do you do? Or like X-Men 2, go back to X-Men 2, where Nightcrawler was able to just bust into the White House, easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's like,
oh, I know.
if
Pop in, pop out. Yep.
someone has quirks like that, and there's so many quirks. I'm honestly surprised too with like the quirk stealing, like the bullets and the trigger bombs, how Eraserhead is not more prominent since he has a quirk that can like stop a quirk. Like he should be a deterrent. Like he should be like, I understand he's a teacher and all that, but he should be sitting on like the Hero Association.
The way they described him was being a very undercover, fly under the radar, just kind of like, I don't want to say small time because he's not small time. Everybody knows him. But like, it's like you have, I mean, I think about it kind of like music. You have the mainstream, you know, top 40, aka the top 10 heroes. But then you also have, I don't want to say a subculture, but kind of the more low key, potentially just as potent, as powerful, as impactful, but don't get all of the recognition. And that's kind of where I saw Eraser being. And I personally think part of the reason he isn't hailed as much as he could be or should be is he has to keep his eyes open to keep the quirk engaged, and he can't do it for very long. So like, as a deterrent, he's kind of weak as a deterrent because he can shut off your quirk for what, a minute or two straight,
something like that. Like, yeah.
And most people are not freaking totally defenseless if they don't have their quirk, like Momo and Shoto. Just saying, love you guys, but god dang it, like I need them.
But the thing is, though, from a legal standpoint, if this is before their provisional licenses, they would get. There's no like self-defense law. You would get in trouble. Like they almost got in trouble for beating Stain. It was just that they beat Stain, that they didn't get in trouble, but they didn't even get the recognition for beating Stain. And also with like the Doomsday, like the theory with that is that obviously you would hope the heroes would win, but if the villains do win, society's going to change. Because like with the quirk thing, also going back to the second movie with 9, he wanted a world where the strongest quirks rule the thing, which is basically what this theory is leading to, that the stronger you are, because these quirks keep getting stronger and stronger, you could take over. Like, and there was a note I wrote too, like no president, prime minister, general, police chief will be able to retain their power and influence in the face of a hero, villain factions. That shake everything up. Like the laws of business, economics, education, even culture and freaking art. They could change anything because they're like, hey, we have stronger quirks. If you don't listen to us, we're going to kill you, or we're just going to throw you out. It's a hero. If Endeavor's like, you know what, I want to rule Japan. What are you guys going to do to stop me? Throwing out, literally, just throw out. I'm ruling Japan. That's it. What are they going to do? I'm pretty sure a group could beat them, but at what cost?
I mean, but what's gained is
control.
You know, returning back to the status quo of what is civilized society, because basically everything all of these villains boil down to is disrupting society as a whole. And so with the Endeavor specific example, like if he did really try to take over, I mean, Shoto's going to be on his ass, Deku's going to be on his ass, the other heroes are going to be on his ass, and he's not going to be able to beat all of them. But I understand if an OP character makes that move, everybody is in trouble. I just really don't like.
All you have to do is take over for a moment, and he will have followers who will protect him and things of that nature. I also want to throw this to you, because in real world, like, it doesn't have to be a villain. It's going back to this theory, which I do believe, the quirk singularity thing. I don't think it's going to blow up the show, because I don't think that's how the author is going to make it end. But going back to real life, if a child right now is born in My Hero Academia and their quirk is a coronavirus, what are you going to do? What's that? You're going to put that kid in jail? You put that kid in jail, all for one. You ostracize that kid, which is going to happen. All for one's going to take advantage. And here we are. Like if
Yeah,
everywhere
my
that
first
kid,
instinct with that first instinct with that coronavirus quirk baby is okay. We need containment, isolation,
but then
and
you're
you
already
already said
breeding,
it. So
you're
then,
already breeding a villain. I mean, you saw what COVID's done to the planet. We shut down, and our whole economic systems changed. People didn't have jobs. 40 million in the United States lost. Everything's changed economically for the worse. And this is normal people. If a super baby has this or a child, and they can get, just think about it. If their parents are pieces of crap and they're like, hey, this is our kid. If you don't do our demands and put us in office, we're going to have our kid breathe and it spreads COVID across, well, whatever their thing would be, an advanced thing. Because that kid probably be like the trigger bomb, cork sealing thing. Like, oh no, everyone gets sick and you die. No cure except for the kid. You can weaponize that, take over, nothing to stop it because there's no bullets. I'm not even saying drop the bomb on that one family, but there's no bullets.
right,
So I think the quirk bullets are needed.
for
But
sure.
the bomb thing is just, obviously you don't want to drop a bomb on an entire nation, but I do think they should look at ways of making it smaller. Or I'm even at the point where if you have it, it has to be like the same thing like the United States. It has to be like 3 specific people who have the code, and you have to vote in Congress. Like you have to do a whole bunch of things to consider. Like if All for One has an army on the continent and they've taken over every other country but one, you got to drop it. I'm sorry, you got to. Like he's already taken
I
over 3
just,
parts of the planet. You got to drop it. At that point, those villains know what they've done and they got to go.
yeah. I, the thing is, since they already exist, even if we did try or it was decided to drop the bomb on All for One,
But those scientists are dead
most
though.
likely he already has it. He already knows it exists. So he would probably have a contingency plan of being immune to it or having a something to counteract it. Like,
That's true, but it'll scare the hell out of all the other ones to make them run because he's only saving himself and the
yeah,
scientists.
yeah.
Like, what
But then,
if he already has it in your thing? If he weapon, imagine if he puts the trigger bomb in Nomu's, and every time you beat a Nomu, it explodes with the trigger bomb. What are you gonna do? You gotta have some deterrence.
damn, I had not considered that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a good thing you're not evil.
Yeah.
Damn. But then it
There's
this is what points back to my whole technology thing is once something's been created, you need to keep stepping it up and creating counterbalances. So I don't know. I feel like there's got to be a different way, a better, but maybe not. And if push really came to shove, if it happened in the show, would I cheer that, All for One is gone and that the threat is gone? Yes. But
I'm just saying,
I feel
like,
like the writer isn't going to go that route, obviously, but I wonder
no,
if it's something he's considered, like if he's thought about it.
yeah. Or like when I talked about that kid being born with coronavirus, just seeing on like one of the sites I'm looking on the side. What if a kid, what if a kid is born with the powers of light from Death Note that they can write your name in a book and you die? What are you gonna do? That's worse than
Not teach
Shinsho.
that kid how to write.
The problem is that's my other problem. Just going back, all these heroes' names are public. They're real. Like you just write their name, they're dead. But no, this was great. This was great. Back and going through all the different things. Andrea, anything else you wanted to add on if the government police should have the quirk bullet or the trigger bombs?
Nope. I think I've said all I needed to say.
So what are we doing in January?
Okay, so because this one was so kind of intense and involved and kind of scary, not gonna lie, I was thinking for the next podcast, I guess it technically wouldn't fall under like a case study per se, but I was thinking we could find like top 3 of our favorite conspiracies about My Hero online and then talk about them. and then having a fourth discussion about who we currently think the traitor is, or like our top 2 picks for who the traitor is right now.
So our top 3 conspiracies, and then who we think the traitor is. And you're gonna stay away from your For You page, and you're not gonna find out who it is.
I don't think I don't know if it's he or she, but I don't think they have not been revealed yet on my For You. I will try to stay away from any spoilers. I've actually not been seeing very many lately, which on the one hand is really good, and then on the other hand is like, but I want to know. So yeah, no, I will stay away from My Hero spoilers, but not Demon Slayer spoilers. I can't make any promises on Demon Slayer.
Fair enough. All right, 3 conspiracies that we've. So yeah, 3 conspiracies for My Hero that we want. Okay, and then the 4th one talking about who we think the traitor are. All right, yeah, that's perfectly fine, and we will do that in January. Andrea, anything else before we close shop?
Nope. Thanks everybody for listening. This was very interesting. I'd like to know if any of our listeners have any additional thoughts or maybe plans on how to get rid of All For One. If he did take over a country without using the trigger bombs, I'd be very interested to hear that. But yeah, just thanks for listening, and this was a lot of fun.
And with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to L7C Podcast. Make sure you listen to all the other My Hero case studies. We're going to be doing these until season 6 comes. And with that being said, take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C Podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.